You're watching Euronews Now with me, Takumbo Silako. These are our top stories. The president of Kazakhstan orders his troops to shoot terrorists without warning as anti-government protests continue across the country. US lawmakers gathered to mark a year since the Capitol building was stormed as Joe Biden and Donald Trump exchanged barbs over who was to blame. And we'll take a close look at how the Serbian city of Novi Sad is celebrating being the country's first European capital of culture.
The president of Kazakhstan says he's authorized law enforcement to use lethal force against protesters who he called terrorist militants and bandits. 26 protesters and 18 policemen have been killed since Tuesday when the violent unrest began, sparked by a sharp rise in fuel prices. Some 3,000 people have been arrested, according to the country's interior ministry. In a televised address to the nation on Friday morning, Tokayev said law and order are the main guarantee of the well-being of the country, and not just Kazakhstan, but all civilized states. As the violence in Kazakhstan in recent days have shown, it's the non-observance of laws, permissiveness and anarchy that lead to the violation of human rights, he said. Russian troops have been arriving in Kazakhstan since Wednesday night after Tokayev appealed to the Russian-led Collective Security Treaty Organization to send troops to help restore order. Kazakh authorities say the troops won't fight the protesters. Instead, they'll guard government institutions.
Well, a short while ago, the Kazakh president addressed the nation and said that he had ordered his troops to shoot on so-called terrorists without any warning. Well, let's hear the thoughts now from Maximilian Hess, Central Asia Fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Well, is this, as some people are saying, another sign of this is the end of this current regime?
It certainly is a very shocking announcement. I think what it does make clear amid all the uncertainty that still lingers, particularly as the internet remains cut off, is that President Tokayev, who had really been a front man for the previous president of 30 years, President Nursultan Nazarbayev, has made a clear break with that regime. That he is now attempting to essentially be the front man for Vladimir Putin and Russia instead in Central Asia. That doesn't mean that the Russians will see this as necessarily entirely a victory. They had a very good, effective working relationship with the last system, but it does make quite apparent that the system and the structure of state and society that existed in Kazakhstan appears to have broken down. The new president is relying on Russian security forces to try to restore that. And I think that is going to likely be quite an escalatory move in the street and with regards to international reaction as well.
President Tokayev was also quite warm in his words towards Vladimir Putin, his Russian counterpart, thanking him for responding to his call to send in troops. You know, what sort of role do you think Russia's going to play in this politically now?
Russia, as mentioned, will see this as a crisis, and that its role is to restore regional stability and to act as the last guarantor of security and provider of stability there. That doesn't mean that the rest of the world will see it that way, but Putin, who's due to hold discussions with the United States over Russia's security role, will use it as an example of exactly that. I don't think that Russia moving in and bringing troops into wide sections of the country, however, would pacify things. It risks an ethnic and sectarian backlash within Kazakhstan as well. The other Central Asian states remain wary of their sovereignty only 30 years after independence, and very well may see Russia coming in as a threat to their position in the long run as well. Kazakhstan has also been the key route for China to build its trade networks through Central Asia. And if the Russians change the position on that, again, it's very early to say and much uncertainty remains, but that could affect Chinese-Russian relations as well.
Maximilian Hess, Central Asia Fellow at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Russia is calling the uprising in Kazakhstan a foreign-inspired attempt to undermine the country's security and integrity by force. Top politicians in Moscow say that it is a threat not only to Russia's ally Kazakhstan, but also to surrounding countries, including Russia itself. When Kazakh President Kassym-Jomart Tokayev accused foreign-trained terrorist groups of driving the unrest and asked the Russian-led Collective Security Treaty Organization for help, Moscow did not hesitate. It rushed its paratroopers across the border overnight on Wednesday. Belarus, Armenia, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan will also provide their forces. However, their exact numbers have not been disclosed. Some independent analysts say that the events in Kazakhstan are an extremely worrying signal for Moscow and that the Kremlin's strategy to safeguard its influence in the former Soviet Union has not changed. Russia says that it would consult with Kazakhstan on further steps to support the authorities. Neither Russia nor Kazakhstan has provided any evidence that protests were inspired from abroad. Galina Polonskaya for Euronews.
From the mountains to the...
US members of Congress marked a day of remembrance on Thursday for the victims of the Capitol Hill assault 1 year ago. Bracing the winter cold, representatives held candles and observed a minute of silence.
My home, sweet home.
Some members of Parliament voiced their experiences, sharing the fear and uncertainty they felt on that day.
Like many of you trapped in the House gallery, I remember every moment vividly. I viscerally feel the pounding on the gallery doors. I hear the shot ringing out. I replay how I made plans to use my gas mask and my cane, newly at my side from a 5-week-old knee replacement surgery, to fight back if attacked. And I remember not knowing if I would make it out of our seat of democracy alive or if our democracy itself would survive.
Many Republicans decided not to participate. The anniversary of the attack has exposed a nation of two people. While Taylor Greene and Matt Gaetz continue to fuel conspiracy theories about dark forces inspiring the riots. Nevertheless, the White House insists that former President Donald Trump was the origin of the assault.
There's only one president in the history of this country who fomented an insurrection which prompted the seizing of our nation's capital.
The press secretary added Joe Biden wants the country to move forward. While the Democratic leader addressed the nation earlier on Thursday, condemning the violence and called the nation to defend US democracy.
Fans of Novak Djokovic gathered outside a government hotel in the Melbourne suburb of Carlton to show their support. The Serbian player is currently being held in the Immigration Detention Centre, where he awaits the outcome of Monday's court hearing. This will decide whether he can stay or whether he will be deported.
I u skladu sa dogovorima koje Ana Brnabić upravo poziva.
Anna Brnabić at this moment is calling a woman from Australian Home Affairs on the phone. I don't know her name. The reason is to beg for only one thing before Monday, before the final decision of the Australian court, and that is to allow Novak Djokovic not to be in this infamous hotel in the true meaning of the word, but instead to be in the house he rented so he could prepare for the tournament and be under 24-hour supervision.
The row centres around a COVID medical exemption Djokovic was given to play in the Australian Open. The decision angered many in a country reporting a surge in COVID cases.
While the Australian Prime Minister claims that the same rules and procedures apply to everyone, Serbian President Aleksandar Vučić says that Novak Djokovic is a victim of harassment. Tennis Australia said a handful of 26 tennis players who applied were given an exception. Until the final decision, the world #1 will remain in the immigration centre in Melbourne.